no one looks at where the information is coming from. Under 1% look at the citation.
Prioritizing your health means that you actually have to look into things. Welcome to episode 39 of Behind the Underdogs. Today we actually don't have a guest, but we're going to be going over a recent topic that kind of flooded social media and media in general, because I actually saw this on the news and then I followed up with and saw it on social media accounts like Joe Rogan and whatnot. But it's the new food pyramid known as the food compass. Um, there are some varying views on this, concerns to some people. Some people took a different approach, like Lane Norton, like you had mentioned earlier today. I also reached out to a few people in the industry, coaches, and trainers and whatnot. But Dylan, what's your first take on this?
Obviously, we went back and forth a little bit on this, and I think the first person I saw post about it was probably Joe Rogan.
Hmm.
And obviously, his caption right away was talking about how this chart or this new food guide makes it appear that Lucky Charms are more recommended or more favorable than steak. And as we all know, Joe Rogan is a
Big steak
um,
guy.
big meat guy in general. Yeah,
Yeah.
elk, raw
Yep.
liver, loves it. So obviously that one was right up his alley. But then probably the next post I saw was by Lane Norton, who's one of the um, most trusted sources when it comes to nutritional sciences. Lane Norton has a PhD in nutritional sciences, so he's kind of my go-to guy for anything I look for regarding a topic like this. And it was actually, I was telling you about his story. It was on his Instagram story that I first saw it and listened to his little rant. And then he ended up having that post that I sent you. And, he breaks down the study and just how like dumb people are. They immediately just assume they don't read, they don't look into it fully.
Yeah.
Um, they don't want to understand, they just want to assume, which is one thing that we've learned.
Oh yeah.
Um, and he talks about how the categories were not meant to be compared to each other. The foods are meant to be compared within their own category, not cross category. And the analogy he gives is like saying that the taking the NBA and the WNBA and saying the number one ranked WNBA player would immediately beat the number
Number
two.
10, or he said
Yeah, I
number
think he
10 or
said
something like
10.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, in the NBA, which is not true. You can't just look at him and be like, "Oh, well, she's number one and he's number 10, so obviously she's better." Well,
Yeah, yeah,
no, they're in
right.
different categories. You're not comparing apples to apples here.
Which is a great
And it's been
analogy in my opinion. I think he
right,
nailed that. Yeah.
100%. And that's essentially, what's going on with this chart is people are taking categories based or foods in different categories and trying to compare them. And that's not how the chart was designed. Now, Lane obviously breaks down everything and looks at all sides of it. So he understands how it can be misinterpreted. And he does realize and acknowledge that it was poor on the, food guy's part, their um, author, distributor, that it wasn't made very clear. It was very easy to misinterpret.
Right.
But he also shit on people and said, like, pull your head out of your ass
Yeah.
and look at the data presented, read it thoroughly, and you would understand this. Like people
But
just
but
want,
this is the thing. He's a PhD, like you said, right? So
Mhm.
he's very knowledgeable, intelligent on topics, especially about this. He's intelligent as a
Yes.
human in general, but on these topics especially. Now, you take someone who's uneducated and who isn't well versed in this category. They're turning to media and they're turning to sources to give them a representation of what this study means, because reading it to
Mhm.
them might not be in the cards straight up. Like it might not be something that they can read and be like, okay, this means that, this means that. They can't compare. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
Mhm.
Like it's
Yeah, yeah,
different.
I know.
Like, and this is the problem with media nowadays is like you can't trust it. Like you can't find a source anymore and be like, I can read this. This is what this means, right? Like you look at what that post comes from. It comes from Good Ranchers, right? I think that's what Joe Rogan, yeah, it was. What Joe Rogan reposted was Good Ranchers, which is a food delivery service, right? You
Mhm.
think a food delivery service, they're in the industry. They should know about these things, right? They should read the study. They should understand it. And people like Joe Rogan who love meat, and they're going to look at that and he's going to trust it because he trusts something like that. So even someone like Joe Rogan of his, which I think he's an intelligent person, I think he's very educated in a lot of different categories. Not all, just like
Mhm.
all of us, right? Everybody's different, but I feel like that would be something that like people would trust Joe Rogan in something like this. And I did at first too, right? I saw that and I was like, immediately I was like, this is ridiculous. But I trusted the study and the results from it without actually diving in on my own. And I feel like that's what people need to do nowadays is like you can't trust anything. Like you have to go in and you have to have your own perception of a study, of an article, of a video. Like you can't just be like, oh, this person said that, so I'm going to believe in it. I mean, I think
Well,
that's like
that's
the
the power
biggest
of
takeaway
influence
from it.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, look at Joe Rogan. He's got how many millions of followers? If
Yeah.
he reposts something like that, maybe he's a more controversial topic or controversial personality. But someone with that much influence, post something like that, people are going to see it, people are going to believe it. Yeah. And that was another thing Lane touched on too was people in any study that he releases, he makes his citations one click. One click, it takes you to the study so you can see the citation, but no one looks at it. He says based like under, I think it was 1%. I forget what he said in that post. Under 1% of his people that view the studies that he posts or the studies that he publishes, under 1% look at the citations. No one looks at where the information is coming from and the references. Like, no one does their own research. They just want to, look and, oh yeah, that's what happened. Like, they want to, they want proof that what they think is true to be true.
Right. Right. But and you know, yes, I do agree with his side of it, but playing devil's advocate, right? When you really look at where this study's coming from, it's coming and it was released by the same institution. It's Tufts University, which is a
Mhm.
world-renowned institution. Like it's supposed to be things that people can look at and trust, right? And I believe if I remember reading it, the study properly, and I'm remembering this correctly, it was part algorithmic. Is that right? The results were part algorithmic.
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So, like this is like part of the problem, right? Like when you look at something, a study like that, like it's not done completely by humans. And when you think of algorithms, right, you think of social media and straight up
Yeah.
corruption that is involved in using an algorithm, right? In general, right?
Mhm.
And when you're using this for the health of a nation, of a world, come on, right? Like that's not going to be the most um respected and way to do it, right? Like people want to see the results done by real scientists. Well, I shouldn't even say that because that's been uh, a tough topic too in recent years. But when you actually look at that chart, I'm sure you've seen the chart with,
Mhm.
they have to be encouraged, to be moderated, and to be minimized. Ground beef is still to be minimized.
Which is unbelievable. That drives me nuts.
So like,
Like,
yeah, and it doesn't matter like what Lane Norton's saying about the comparison, it's still ridiculous that it's to be minimized for ground beef. I mean,
yes,
come on.
I agree. Especially from my own experiences and probably one of the most like um another guy that I trust is Stan Efferding with the
Mm,
vertical diet. World renowned powerlifter and IFBB pro bodybuilder. And he stands behind the vertical diet. Well, what is the basis of the vertical diet? Red meat, white rice, and all your micronutrient requirements through spinach, carrots, orange juice, cranberry juice, that sort of thing. But the foundation is red meat. Why? Because it is what he calls, and many others in the industry call, superfood. It is so nutrient dense, like steak,
yeah.
ground beef, bison. It's the most. That's why it's preferred over white meat for certain reasons. Obviously, it's fattier, so depending on your diet goals, caloric needs, but it's so nutrient rich. It's
Mm,
full of vitamins
yeah.
and minerals, riboflavin, vitamin B, vitamin K, selenium, like everything you need you can find in red meat where you can't get that with grains, you know what I
I
mean? Like
know.
it.
I know.
So that's what really bothers me because especially being an athlete
Yeah.
and an athlete with a high amount of muscle mass, and to maintain that, you need protein, you need red meat, sources like that. You can't minimize that and expect to perform or maintain muscle mass like that. It's unbelievable.
I
But
know.
you think I'm gonna maintain performance and muscle mass eating Lucky Charms and grains and legumes, whatever else they recommended on there?
Yeah, and there are a few others that are like to be moderated, and there's actually one that's in to be encouraged. Cereal, frosted mini wheats.
Which
I mean,
which is crazy.
come on.
Absolutely crazy. Just a bunch of processed wheat and sugar.
And
That's what
Honey
that
Nut
is.
Cheerios, like that's supposed to be one of the healthier cereals, but still, it's all processed shit. You know what I mean?
And the fact that cereal is a breakfast food is the
Oh
biggest
my God, I
scam.
know, I know.
Like, who thinks that they should start their day with a bunch of sugar and grains and just a bunch of
It's
carbs, no
it's
protein?
it's
You need,
genius from business perspective,
hmm
not from health and supplementation side of things
no,
at
not
all.
at all. And
Yeah,
that's the problem with our world today. The food chain is a mess.
yeah,
Um, our trainers at 3 where we work out at the rink, like, that's one thing we talk about is that our food supply in today's day and age is ruined. It's wrecked. And John has one rule of thumb, or one of many, and one of them is if it wasn't around 10,000 years ago, don't eat it. So that includes most of our food nowadays. But cereals, absolutely not. It's all just processed, manufactured shit. And you talk about what we should be eating for breakfast. It's not cereal. It talks about eating high protein, high fat, something that's going to fuel you for the day. Um, sausage patties, eggs. Um, it's not what's on most kids'
yeah,
plates in the morning.
yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah. And like my biggest concern too, like immediately when I saw this, my first perspective of it was like our younger generations and the people who are in elementary school and middle school that are in preschool and stuff like that who are actually have to follow this food compass, right? Because you remember the food pyramid when we were younger, right?
Hmm.
And you're in health
Yeah.
class and like they're really pushing this stuff and they're granted like there were good stuff on it, right? Like they're healthy foods. And the fact that this is now our new world that we're living in, where it's like, okay, an ice cream cone with nuts is on a list of things to be moderated. Come on, like that shouldn't be on a health, a health and wellness list for younger generations. Like, you look at our obesity rates in the United States, it's atrocious,
Mm.
right? And the fact that
Well,
these
what
things are
is it in
coming
the
out like
US? It's
this.
like 40 some percent, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Something
believe. I
ridiculous.
don't know the exact number, so I can't really speak on it, but it is high. It's definitely high, without a doubt. You can look that up if you want. Um, but like, I mean, come on, ice cream cone with nuts, almond M&Ms, canned pineapple and syrup, Lucky Charms, frosted mini wheats. Like
Wow.
this
So
is
just to give the fact, nationally 41.9% of adults have obesity in the US. That's crazy.
yikes,
It's absurd.
yikes. And what
And
source
but
is
you
that
look at
from?
it, tfh.org, State of Obesity 2022. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, I just saw that post from that doctor. I don't remember his exact name, but we share his posts every once in a while. I sent you one today, but he mentioned,
Dr. Denick,
yeah, yeah,
whoever his
yeah,
name is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So he posted something.
James.
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to get the exact name. Actually, can you get the name while I explain this? So he posted something a couple days ago, and it was like, if you can't do X amount of push-ups, if you can't do X amount of
Yes.
pull-ups,
Yep.
if you can't do a mile in 7 minutes, then you need to be like essentially like you need to be reconsidering your daily life habits. And like I
And I
feel
think if
like
he said you could do everything on the list, you're in the top 1%, he said. I'll
yeah,
find that post right here. But yeah, yeah, so here it is. His name, I don't know how you pronounce his last name if I'm being totally honest with you. James Dino Nicolantonio. But he goes by Dr. James Dinnick. And yeah, I don't know what percent of adults could do the following, but these are good goals to aim for. Under a 7-minute mile, 25 push-ups in a row, 5 to 10 pull-ups, run a 5K, 10 to 15 dips in a row, roundhouse kick head level. That one was kind of interesting. And a 100-yard dash in
flexibility,
under
stretch
15
and
seconds.
flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, functionability. Yeah. If you can do all of these, you're in the top 1%.
And that
That's
is
pretty
sad.
crazy
That's sad to believe though. Like
because those
that's
aren't
the
that
top
hard.
1%. I know, I know.
And
Yeah,
you look at us, okay, being athletes, looking at our teams, probably just about everyone could do those. Maybe the kick, some of the flexibility, I don't know, but every one of the strength and, endurance and the sprint, I think everyone on our teams could do it. So you think, oh, that's not that bad. But compared to the rest of the world, that's in the top 1%.
right,
That's scary.
right. I know, and I think like I try to give it the benefit of the doubt for people when you really think about athletes, right? Like a lot of athletes are done after college. People who are athletes through college, and then when they're done, they get a 9 to 5 job, and that's kind of it. Like some people will continue working out, routinely though, not like very effectively in terms of cardiovascular and
Strength training,
strength and
weights.
strength training.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like a lot of people, they'll, either cut out all of cardio and just strength train, which obviously isn't isn't a very good result if you're, still going out on the weekends and eating out every night. Like,
Or you'll get the people that just run. They think that, oh, to stay in
yeah,
shape, I just need to run. They don't touch
yeah,
weights, and then they wonder why they're not in shape.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there's, like you said, it really tapers off after college. Or he could be on my dad's workout plan, the week on, week off. He only works out when he's up at north on camp. He works shift work, so he'll work out on his shift, and then when he comes home, he's busy doing whatever. So there's no time,
yeah.
or he doesn't make time for it. So he trains every second week. It works for him.
It's better than
But
nothing though, right?
oh, exactly. And he runs, lifts weights, he does everything. And then when he's home, he's so active with yard work. That's why we bug him, but he does work out.
Yeah,
He's not lifting weights when he's at home. But yeah, we always
yeah.
make fun of his week on, week off workout program.
Man, you'd be surprised though, like stuff like that. So my dad, I got my dad on the Whoop train now too. He has a Whoop,
Oh yeah.
and he's got a physical job. He's puts in wood floors, right? Like he does that. He has his own business. He's been doing it since he was 18 years old. Okay, he's now
Hmm.
55. Um, and I used to be a gnat to him too, right? Like he'll like come home from a long day at work or something like that, and I'll be like, "Oh, you lifting tonight?" He's like, "No, like, it was a tough day at work today." I'm like, "Ah, come on, you baby, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta get down there and work out or something like that." And he got the Whoop, and I was like, and it's legit. Like he'll come home after a day of work and he'll have like an 18 out of 21 strain.
No
Um,
way.
and I'm like, "Phew," and but like the thing is like when he lifts, like he lifts, right? Like he gets in at least a few lifts per week. But I mean, for the people, you think about people who aren't doing manual labor, who aren't in physical job, they're working behind a
Hmm.
desk. They are disintegrating. Like they're disintegrating by the day.
Yeah.
And like that stuff kind of bugs me, right? Like you need to if you actually want to live, the funny thing is like people think that they can have all the money in the world, this, that, and the other thing, that they're gonna live this free life. No, like what's free is actually being in shape, being able to do the things that you want to do when you have the money, right?
Yeah, well,
Like,
there's that saying that health is wealth, and
oh yeah.
you'll see lots on Instagram, lots of famous business people that, like, yeah, you can have all the money in the world, but if you're sick and riddled with disease or injury, what's the point? And they kind of talk about the orders, you know, order of wealth. Number one is your health and your family, and
Hmm.
then your money, your net worth. That's kind of the order of your wealth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy.
Honestly, I think like that's when I'm done, like obviously right now you and I we have structure, right? Like you have team lifts, you have team practice. But if I had to choose, right? Like if I had my job, we were working underdog full time. Theoretically, let's just say we're working underdog full time. I'm doing my training in the morning. That's like my first
Hmm.
priority. I'm getting it out of the way because I know that there are going to be other things that come up during the day that I won't have control of, and those will have priority at that point in time in the day. Like if it's like a meeting comes up, we have to have a meeting at like 3:30 or something like that, and I'm like, well, I mean, I don't really have a choice, right? It's not like I can just say, like, screw the meeting, I'm going to go for a run or I'm going to get a lift in, right? You know what I mean? So I think that's what people don't think, right? Like, they don't think, like, okay, if I just get the workout done before my workday starts, I'm not going to have to worry when I get home from work and I got to cook food or I got to, like, you know, if you're older, take the kids to practice or something like that. Like, yeah, like life's going to get in the way, but you can get around it, right? It's about what you prioritize
Making it
and
a priority.
yeah,
Exactly.
and
You got to
health
make it a
should 100%
priority.
be a
Yeah.
priority. A perfect example of prioritizing your health. You and I on road trips, right? During juniors, we would bring our own
Yeah,
food because we knew we were going to get nutrition throughout the whole weekend.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you gotta think ahead, right? Like you can't just be like in the moment.
I know. And I think it's so funny too, like, yeah, life's gonna get in the way. You're gonna travel. Um, but it's not an excuse for your diet to tank or to not work out. Like I think it's always funny that one of the best parts about going to the hotels is checking the hotel gym out. I'm always like, oh, what's it look like? Like,
Yeah, right,
oh, what do they
right,
got?
right.
Um, but yeah, it's all about making it a priority. And anyone can do it. It doesn't take much.
Yeah,
It's obviously a lot easier said than done, but
yeah.
it's
And I
just about
guess,
making it a priority.
yeah, and I guess how this relates back to like what this episode was mainly about, which is the whole food pyramid slash food compass thing, is that prioritizing your health means that you actually have to look into things, right? Like it doesn't matter who you are,
Mm.
like look a little more, right? And obviously there's going to be differing points of view. Like when you look at, and you made a good point too, right? Like the food that we eat today, it's tough to figure out. It is, right? Especially if you're not an athlete, you're not actually looking into these things on a daily basis. You could look at something and be like, oh, that might be healthy, right? Like if I actually look back before I was really focusing on nutrition, really focusing on training. I'm talking like maybe when I was like 11 or 12 when I thought I was eating healthy. But like I actually take inventory of like what I was eating and like, you know, it wasn't up to par with the standards of today. You know what I mean? For me,
Hmm.
anyways. So like that's the other thing is like it comes with experience. Like you need to learn what works for you and what doesn't. I think that's why there's so much division on certain foods that are deemed like not good for you versus good for you, like eggs, for example, right? Like there'll be people. That's a perfect example because there's people who are totally against it, and there are people who are
It'll
totally
raise your
for it.
cholesterol.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
And
exactly.
well, there's good and bad cholesterol, but dietary cholesterol is necessary for building most of your hormones. It's necessary for the structure of testosterone. Like
Yeah,
as a male, you need dietary cholesterol, but there's people out there that, and yeah, at one point eggs were good, then they were bad, then they were good. Now it's just eat the white. No,
yeah,
you need the yolk for the vitamin. Blah, blah. It's gone back and forth, like you said. But yeah, there's so many people. No, cholesterol's bad. All you eat, like even people say to me, I've had 5 eggs. Granted, not when I'm at the dining hall. I'll have omelets and eggs and whatnot. But when I'm cooking for myself, every morning is 5 eggs and whatever else. But that's always been a staple. Oh, 5 eggs every morning. Your cholesterol's gonna be so high. No, it's not. It's not.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I know. Yeah,
drives me
but
nuts.
and that's the other part too is like it. But everybody's different though. You know what I mean? Like someone else eating 5 eggs might have a different. They might have a different
Effect.
physiological
Yeah,
response. You know what I mean?
yeah, it
So
could.
totally different. But
Everyone. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Remember,
mean.
remember in juniors when you tried going vegan?
Huh, yeah. Well, that's the thing is like I wanted to try it. I wanted to see like what all the
Yeah.
rave was about. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, like
After that stupid documentary, Game Changers, that was just full of
yeah,
shit.
yeah, but it was that, and I also looked more into it too, and I was like, all right, well, let's see if this is something. Because, dude, like, let's face it, there are plenty of athletes nowadays that are vegan. Like, people do
Yeah,
it,
which just
100%.
blows my mind.
And it just didn't work for me. It just didn't work. You know what I mean? Like, I felt weaker. Granted, I was on a heavy like meat based diet before that. So my body was probably just like, what the fuck is going on here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Now, did I send you Lane Norton's? He has a whole story highlight just called Game Changers. If I haven't sent you it already, you should check it out. He breaks down all the claims in that show and just what a
hmm,
load of BS it was.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
all the claims, cherry-picked data. Um, Do you remember they did the blood vial test and it was like, see, this is what happens when you eat meat,
yeah,
your
yeah,
blood's all cloudy. That
yeah,
was
yeah,
just total BS. Like
yeah.
it's no such thing.
Okay,
But he breaks all that down.
yeah. And
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, that's a perfect example. You said the cherry picking thing, and I think that's the problem with a lot of studies nowadays, and it's all based on biases, right? Like, they'll
Yeah,
you'll pick a side, and they'll pick little pieces of information from a study that'll
that
just
support their claim.
perfectly support
Yep,
their claims, and that's like the
yep,
issue with all of media today. It doesn't matter what industry it is. It could be freaking the news in the morning. It could be fitness industry. It could be business, it could be whatever. And people will pick a side, businesses will pick a side, in the fitness industry especially, they'll pick sides, and all they have to
Hmm.
do is take the information that they want, that's going to support what they're talking about, and that's it. Even though there's so many different sides, so many different angles to everything,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
that's what I like about Lane Norton too, is he's not biased. He's neutral. He looks at the
Mm,
data, will justify either side. He's not a fan of these he'll call them the keto zealots or zealots or however he
zealots, yeah.
like yeah, like you have the keto and carnivore side of things, and then you have the vegan side of things, like these people that think that, oh, it's my way or the highway, like this is what you need
Mm,
to do. And he doesn't pick a side. He will rebuttal and um, show data against both sides of it. Like, and I think one, Paul Salentino, the guy on Instagram that goes as Carnivore MD,
mm-hmm,
he's a prime example of what, yeah, Lane describes as cherry picking. He'll use data, so it's very persuading because you'll show the study and this, oh, this stated by so and so, blah blah blah. He'll have the link, but then if you actually look at it, so for the average viewer, it looks great. Like, oh, he made all these claims, and look at he showed the
mm.
sources, like it must be true.
And he's a
But then,
valuable source because he has
yeah,
so many
he's an
followers or
MD.
whatever. Yeah, and he's
Yeah,
an MD. Yeah.
and Lane will look into it, and it's like, no, if you actually read the study and read his source, you can tell that he cherry picked the data. Like it may suggest, or it's possible that this can happen, but there's no concrete data to support it. And yeah, it's just he'll cherry pick little claims that support his belief. And his side of things is that it's meat, the animal based diet. These are the best foods for you to thrive, I think is his saying.
Hmm. Hmm.
um and yeah, he's against eating leaves, stems, roots, and seeds, something like that. You only eat the fruit of the plant and meat, and that's how you thrive. This is what we're meant to eat. Well, how do you know what we're meant to eat 10,000 years ago? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah. And I don't think
but that's
anybody
his claim.
truly
So
knows now either, to be honest with you.
no,
I
I
guarantee you,
don't
and
know.
I've
I'm
talked to my
I'm
dad.
not educated enough.
Yeah, and I've talked to my dad about this too, because he's been in, not in the fitness industry, but he's been active participant in the
Hmm.
fitness industry. He was a boxer when he was younger. Same thing with my mom, and she says the same thing. She was a bodybuilder. So back in their day, they talk about the stuff that they used to take for supplements, and now it's like banned. They're banned. You know what I mean? It's like, and the foods you used to eat back then, like my dad, to make weight, he'd eat like canned canned foods, and like that was people swore by it to like lose weight, and it was like nowadays it's like what. You know what I mean? Like it was just,
Yeah.
great. He'd eat like green beans and like no proteins, and to make weight for his competitions and stuff like that. It's like, oh my God, you look at it
That's how
now,
it
it's
was.
like,
Like,
yeah.
everything changes over time. It's like even smoking. Back then, smoking was acceptable. It
Oh,
wasn't.
that's a perfect
There are all these
example. Yeah.
harsh claims. You know, any kid today knows that smoking causes cancer, bad for your health, just bad in general. Everything that's in them, the process, the mechanism of it. But back then, everyone smoked. That's how it was. Hell,
I
my
know.
grandma started smoking at 13 years old. She still smokes to this day. Like,
That's
it
insane.
was just, it was normal.
I know.
Yeah,
And
never
we've talked
stopped.
about that too, though. Like, and this is kind of going on a tangent now, but I guess it's worthy of a conversation. Just like how you can see people who lead unhealthy lives versus people who lead healthy lives. Some will live longer on the unhealthy side than people on the healthy side. And it makes you wonder. Like it really does make me wonder about like ways of living and what actually is going to give you longevity. Because ultimately, right, like we eat healthy, we train our bodies to live healthy lives and live longer lives and more effective and efficient lives. But okay, what is it that we're doing that might actually not trigger that? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I'll give you a prime example of that. I'll tell you a quick story of just, yeah, people that make the right decisions, they're not living as long as people that make poor decisions. I look at my grandparents on my mom's side of the family. My grandma has smoked since she was 13. She's now 80 some, has no health conditions. She's healthy. And my grandpa, who also used to smoke, quit smoking cold turkey January 1st of, I forget what year, a number of years ago, when my mom was young. I'd have to ask her the date. 80 some,
Okay, so a long time
80 or
ago.
90 some. Yeah, a long time ago. decided, this is when it was becoming known, okay, smoking's bad for you. Quit cold turkey. Well, he gained a bunch of weight as a result because that's,
Hmm.
when you quit smoking, you need something, so it's replaced by eating. So he gained weight and he ended up getting sick. He had a neurological disease called PSP. It's in the Parkinson's family. Not that it was related to smoking or anything like that, but just the way it goes, he ended up getting sick, passed away in 2013. And you look at the decisions he made, he quit smoking, and he
To
was the
lead a
one that
healthier
ends up
life.
getting
Yeah.
sick. Yeah, to
Yeah.
lead a healthier life, exactly. And he's the one that ends up getting neurological disease. Took him in the matter of a few years, and yeah, and then you look at my grandma, and she smoked her whole life and has no issues. And it's like, well, how does that work?
Oh, it's crazy. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it makes you like that's why like conversations like these and people who are take one side or people are like Lucky Charms, like no, like what are they doing? They might be the ones that end up with the better lives, the longer lives, whatever. You just don't know. You
Yeah.
really don't. So at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, it's like what really is the answer? And nobody knows. Nobody really knows. And I think that's why it's an open-ended discussion, especially with food and dietitians that what they preach, what they say is right, what's wrong. I think you just got to go by yourself, by your body, what makes you feel good, right? Like what makes you
Mm-hmm.
most I think, at least for me, right? The reason why I eat the foods that I do is that it makes me feel the most energy. It makes me feel the most productivity throughout the day, strength, focus, like all those things are what I gauge my diet off of. And I've cut things
Mm-hmm.
out of my diet that made me feel sluggish, that made me feel foggy, like things like that, and which were healthy foods that I just like took out of my diet. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm. See, that's something I give you credit for that because I think that's something I lack is the ability to be self-aware because I think there's so many different factors to go into it. Like, it's okay, like, do I feel off today because of something I ate?
mhm,
Do I feel weak? Like, that's probably the biggest one. Like, okay, the weights felt heavy today. I didn't have much energy. Is it something I ate? Well, no, I ate the same thing yesterday and felt fine.
yeah,
I'm not very good at gauging, like, okay, yep, that's what it is. I need to make this change. Um, I'm more, I eat this because I know what it's supposed to do and how I should feel on it, and this is the right decision that I should be making. So, it's almost like a bit of that placebo effect. Like I know this should be good for me, so it will be good for me.
yeah, yeah,
But I think I lack that, yeah, that ability to be self-aware of, okay, yeah, I had whatever, bacon at breakfast today, and I felt
yeah,
like shit
yeah,
at 2 o'clock. Like, is that
yeah.
it? I don't know. I lack that ability.
Yeah, I know, but for people who do like struggle with the nutrition side of things, I think it's worth like I told my sister, right? She keeps a journal of what she eats every day, and I told her like what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good, and the things
That's the
that
way
make
to
you
do
feel
it.
like shit,
100%.
cut it out. You know what I mean? Like take it out.
Yep.
Because ultimately, like you want to feel good. You know what I mean? Like for me
Mhm,
personally, like I, it's tough too with the schedule of being an athlete and all that stuff, but me personally, I would much rather have smaller meals throughout the day because big meals make me tired after. And it's because your body's digesting the food, like that's the whole reaction physiologically that happens throughout your body. It's working on digesting the food, and then your focus is going to hinder in different aspects. So it's like
mhm.
I would much rather have the smaller meals, but ultimately scheduling is what it comes down to. So it's tough right now, but in the future, that's what I go for on days that I don't have such heavy training days.
Well, exactly. And you'll find people, like you said earlier, there's things that work for some and not for others. But then there's, people you'll see online, mostly on Instagram influencers, whatever. Oh, if you're eating 6 meals a day, you know, whatever. I forget what the one claim was. This one guy had that just how bad it was. I think he was saying on your kidneys, you're constantly putting them under pressure. You're never going to live long like that. You need to be eating 1 to 2 meals a day. But then it's like, okay, you look at myself as an athlete. How am I going to function off 1 to 2 meals a day? Like, are you out of your mind? Like, but
Realistically, I eat
that's
whenever I
just
can.
another,
I
yeah,
literally eat whenever I can. Like right now,
every couple of hours.
I'm doing lift, skate, run, lift, skate, run. Like that's what I do.
Mm,
Because I'm training for the ultra, so I have to run as much as I can. But I always run
mm,
when I'm already fatigued because I want to be it's once again, it comes down to priorities. Like I
Yeah.
want to be most prepared for my lift and skate than for the run. Like the run's the last thing, and I can be tired for that because ultimately at the race I'm gonna be tired anyway.
You're
So
gonna
I
be
might as
tired.
well
Yeah.
practice. I might as well practice being tired. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's just like you have to think about what you're doing, like actually break it down and like strategize of like what's going to work best for me. So many people just
Hmm.
wing it. You can't just wing it. You know what I mean? You gotta like have some structure, have some organization and thought into what you're actually doing. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much broke it down as much as we could, or at least talked about it. I don't like putting tags on anything or labels on anything because I'm just not qualified to do that. But I like having the
Exactly.
conversation about these things because it's important to have the conversation and give your opinion out there. And I think there's just so many different opinions on various topics that like the best thing that people can do is just have your own opinion based on the resources and sources that you can collect, the information that you can collect. You need to make your own, critically think for yourself and come up with your own perception of something. So
Mhm.
that's it for today's episode. Next one we will have a guest, so stay tuned for that next week, and we'll see you on the next episode.